everyone. This is Raphael.
I'm Loryn.
We're the Pacheco siblings, and welcome to the Hypercube podcast, a talk show in which two siblings converse about anything and everything. I think I nailed it. For context, before the recording, I was trying to create the perfect intro that can be just cut and pasted. I don't know. That might be a who's the Greek hero that's just doing
Sisyphusian?
Sisyphus.
Sisyphus is Sisyphusian.
Sisyphusian task. Maybe there is no perfect intro. I don't know. But if there is one,
you'll hear
I'll
it
copy
again
and paste it forever. But was that it? You don't know.
Well, you will if you're in the far future and you're going to just listen to the next episode right away.
Yeah, but who's to say? I think they all kind of sound generally similar enough that I don't know if anybody would be able to tell.
Well, that's the thing. It's like we have at least 39 takes to choose from at this point.
This is true. But that feels, no, I'm always looking forward, never back. Which is untrue, but I would like to be that way.
Yeah, you're always looking forward. So you can take the next one and put it in front of you.
I'm going to have to think about that one for a second. Well, anyway, here we are.
Take the last one and put it in front of you. But
it is the morning for me.
It is way late at night for me.
We're kind of all over the place here, but it is the morning for me. And therefore, my voice is very deeped. So you get my morning voice. And this will probably be great for podcasting, but hopefully it's not too vocal fried.
And it is very late for me. So I'm going to be a little bit more drunk than usual.
Yeah. So we're two peas in a pod at that rate. We've got deep voice and drunk. Time to podcast.
Yeah. Not drunk per se, but just I've been
drunk. Yes.
No, I've just been chronically sleep deprived for the last few days.
Yeah, that happens with you though.
It does, but I feel like it's been pretty bad for the last week or so. But then the last couple of days, I think I've only got a couple hours sleep just because of all this stuff that's going on right now. No, it's all right. I mean, it's not all right at all, but it happens.
It sucks. It sucks. For sure.
Yeah, it's all right. That's a lie. It sucks. But
yeah, well, we got plenty of suck to go around, but things are picking up. I've started physical therapy this last week to just kind of give an update on my injury. And it's been nice. I like physical therapy. And it generates remarkable improvements rather surprisingly immediately. Like you get really actionable advice, you know what I mean? From somebody who really knows their stuff. It's kind of reminded me of the value of having one on hand, because I don't have you on hand anymore. You were kind of our de facto physical therapist for a long time, where it's just like, something's wrong with my body. What do I do? And you could just be like, do this, this, and that. Because you technically have that training, right? Like you have the physical therapy knowledge.
Very, very technically. I was taking courses that would have eventually, if I continued along that path, led to a physical therapy education.
Yes. But still, you have I think you're selling yourself short. You do have a fair amount of expertise because you've continued to educate yourself in this, right?
That's the thing. I have the expertise and I have the knowledge. I have none of the certifications and qualifications.
Yeah. That's the issue, right? Yeah, you're not. Yeah. You don't have the certs. But as far as de facto goes, right, for us poor people, you might as well be a physical therapist as far as to friends and family go. But it's reminded me of the value of that, because I didn't realize how much I missed that from not having you around until I got to my physical therapy session. And I'm like, wow, I just got a lot of questions answered really quickly. And I now have a much clearer idea of how I should be living on a day-by-day basis, as well as some nice little exercises to do that I could do anytime. I'm doing them right now. Look, I'm wiggling my foot.
Wiggle them toes.
My toes aren't too great, but right now we're focusing on kind of gross foot movements. Because he was pointing out, even while it was in the boot, it wasn't doing anything. Even if I put pressure on it while it was in the boot, even if I put weight on it, it wasn't doing anything. The foot itself wasn't moving. It was just kind of stationary. So when you have that long a time where your foot's just not doing anything, your mobility is going to suffer. And
your muscle atrophy.
Yeah. And so he's kind of done a lot that showed me just how much it has, where it's just and they do the thing where they take the measurements of the ankle angle of your ankle if you press as far in one direction or another. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he was saying like there's like a certain angle that you need to be able to reach just to walk normally. Yeah. And as far as ankle mobility goes. And so it's just like, if we could get you back up to that, that's like, kind of enough to clear you. But I'm not there yet, evidently. I cannot walk like a normal person, but I am walking a lot more than I used to. And I'm basically walking everywhere
with like a reverse limp.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know how to describe it because it's kind of like a limp, but like I'm not like...
It's a reverse limp.
Yeah, maybe you can explain it better than I can. I don't understand why I'm walking the way that I do, but it's goofy looking.
Well, it's because if your ankle can't flex to the level that it should be able to literally just propel yourself forward, you end up coming up on your toe, which elevates your hip, which elevates your whole body, which means that you on that foot, your center of mass is going up instead of forward.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. Like it feels like I'm taller when I walk on my left leg versus on my right. Like I just go like whoop.
And that's just because when you step forward, your ankle can't hold that angle. So instead of like not collapsing behind it, but like like when I'm like making hand movements back here that you can't see.
Yeah, for sure.
But instead of like being able to close that angle to be able to propel yourself using the elasticity of your calves and then, walking, it's stiff and holds it when it locks up at an angle, which means in order for you to continue to push your foot back, you have to come up on your toes, which elevates your heel, which elevates your everything else.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's been very interesting, but it is so nice to be able to walk on my own 2 feet again. And because I've been upgraded from a boot to an ankle brace, but my physical therapist.
And that's just like a brace that you can wear in a shoe, a normal shoe.
Basically, yeah, it fits into a shoe with some squeezing. But it kind of locks your foot a little bit in place, kind of like the boot did, but not as rigidly. And it's got that flexibility where it can fit in a shoe, and it's very thin. It's a lot of work though, because it's got all these laces. Evidently there's Velcro versions of these too that are a lot easier to put on, but this one's all laced up, and then it's got a couple of Velcro straps that go around the heel on top of that. But it's kind of a lot of work to get on and off, but we're getting faster at it little by little. Haley's been a big help because she's like, it's just like a corset, and then you're zoop, zoop, zoop. So, but my physical therapist actually let me know that I can pretty much like go without the ankle brace just when I'm at home and stuff. If I want to, like I
would recommend doing that as well.
That. Yeah, that's what I've been doing since he gave me the go ahead on that. It's good to have the expert before you try anything. But he was saying like just like sleeping without it and just walking around the home without it is fine, unless you really intend on like doing an activity that requires you to stand for an extended period of time, like cooking or something. But other than that, like when you're around the home, he was like, you don't need to have that on, and it'll help you get more mobility if you don't have that on.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot about injury recovery that has changed within like the last 10 or so years.
Oh, really?
Just like physical sciences. It used to be like, have you ever heard of the acronym RICE?
Oh yeah, I think you mentioned that to me.
Yeah. So that used to be the recovery method, which is rest, ice, compression, elevation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, if you sprain your ankle, if you break a joint or anything like that was what you did, was you rested, put ice on it, put it in compression so that it's stabilized, and elevate it so that there's less blood flow going to the area, which reduces inflammation. All of these things are really, really good for your joint, your muscles in the first few days that you broke or injured that joint. And that's it. Anything after that point, those exact same things become detrimental to recovery. Resting on that joint does not strengthen it. And strengthening is what you want to do to recover.
Yeah.
Icing it reduces inflammation, which means icing it reduces blood flow and elevation as well. Reduces blood flow, which reduces inflammation, which means less blood flow gets to the area, which means there's less healing happening. And compression means there's no mobility. And if there's no mobility, then you can't get that range of motion back, and your muscles aren't working. They're not active. So they just continue to atrophy, which means you lengthen the process of recovery afterwards. So the longer you stay out of those things and do the opposite of them, the faster your recovery will be. with the caveat that too much of it will also will also lengthen the recovery process, because too much activity can exacerbate pain, increase swelling, stuff like that, which will then make recovery hard.
Which it does still swell quite a bit. I will say that. It's not as bad as it was. Yeah.
The pain is good. No, it's not good, but the pain isn't good, but the swelling is good, because swelling is, your body doesn't have a brace. So it uses swelling to do that. Swelling is your body's way of locking a joint into place. So the mobility, like the range that you have while your ankle is like naturally swollen, is the safe range to operate your foot, basically, is what your body's like saying, anything outside of this range is scary territory.
Gotcha. Okay, I did not realize that.
But the swelling is good because that means there's more blood flow. So, and the blood, you need blood flow in the area to recover. So the muscles need it, the bones need it, the tendons need it, the ligaments need it. You need blood. Blood is good for you. And more swelling means more blood.
Blood is good. Good to know. Because it's definitely not as bad as it was. Like at some points it would get like so swollen that it looked like a giant baby's foot. Like it was bad.
Yeah.
Especially when it was like confined in something like the boot or the brace. And there was a while there where I wasn't taking the brace off much either. But like now, ever since I've started taking the brace off more regularly, that has helped control the swelling and at least limit it to like a manageable amount. And so it's not a big fat baby's foot anymore. But it is, it is still fairly noticeably more swollen than the other foot. However, it is definitely in a more manageable place. I don't need to be like pounding ibuprofens, to just get back to normal.
Absolutely. The more that your nervous system recognizes the increased mobility as safe, the less you will start to swell as well. Because again, like the swelling is a response to perceived danger. If you move any further than that, your body thinks it's going to hurt itself. So it prevents your body from doing that. So swelling occurs. Once your nervous system recognizes that, it doesn't hurt anymore to move my ankle in this within this range, that's safe. I don't have to induce a swelling inflammation response anymore, and you'll swell a lot less. So the more you get into recovery, the less you'll swell, and then the less you swell, the more you get into recovery, and it's nice.
Well, thank you for that. Like I said, your expertise always really helps with this stuff. It answers a lot of questions, and it's nice. It's nice to have that around. And I feel like we haven't gotten to do too much of that kind of talk on the podcast as well, even though it is.
This is true.
We do fairly regularly outside of it. But yeah, that is an area of your expertise that I feel like we don't often get to air. But
I've got a lot to say about human bodies. That's true.
Well, for as long as we can remember, for as long as I can remember anyway, you've always had a fascination with human bodies. Like I feel like that goes way back. Like just from an early age, you were just very interested and kind of adept with like human bodies and movement and strength and all these different subjects of just like how do people work?
I don't know. Like it seems normal to me, because it seems completely natural to want to have an owner's manual for the vehicle that you were born in.
That is fair. Like we occupy these skin suits full time. Like there's no avoiding that.
Like I live here. So,
no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like that's always how I've seen it. It's just like no one gave me an owner's manual, but I got to figure this stuff out by trial and error. And like, I don't have to. I don't have to figure it out by trial and error anymore, because people already did that for me. But like, yeah, this body does things, and I would like to know what those specs are.
Yeah, I like that. That's a pretty intuitive, I guess, when you put it that way. Okay, so speaking of bodies.
I like bodies.
We need to talk about D&D. We've been talking about D&D actually, because obviously RPGs, huge part of our interest and wheelhouse. But for those who are not in the know, basically a new edition of Dungeons and Dragons is in the process of launching. They say it's not a new edition.
So it's basically a new edition. Like it's in every way except officially, it is a new edition.
Exactly. Like as far as I'm concerned, and I think as far as a lot of the fandom is concerned, it's basically 5.5.
It is 5.5.
Because it uses the same base rules as 5th edition, but so many things have been changed.
Straight up changed.
straight up change that it's really hard to call it the same thing. It is 5.5 in principle, in theory, in, like you said, everything but official. It is 5.5. Obviously, these things are kind of like a soft gradual launch because they have 3 different core rule books at any given time for D&D. And so those rule books are going to come out over a period of time. But right now, just the other week, the new 2024 Player's Handbook, aka 5.5e, just launched. And I'd actually pre-ordered all of them. I did the whole bundle of the digital and physical because I was like, okay, this is something I want to have on hand. It's going to be useful when I'm launching a home game to have the physical copies, and I want to have a digital reference as well because that's just easy. It just anybody who's ever GM'd knows how useful it is to have a digital copy of your materials. Just like snip, snip, snip.
Yeah.
Copy and paste. Bada bing, bada boom.
Exactly. And, Control F and snip are your friends.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it is so useful. And then you could put that stuff into your own document and organize it however you please. It's just a necessity in this day and age. And and don't get me wrong, people have been doing it without it. I know it's not literally a necessity, but it's an efficiency necessity as far as I'm concerned.
It's sanity necessity.
For sure. So that's been really exciting. I think both of us have been poring over the new Player's Handbook a fair bit. It's definitely, like I said, it's got some stuff that
I'd call it dabbling.
Oh, I've been scouring. I've been searching every chance I get. No, I'm kidding. It's definitely very interesting. I think my first impressions are, okay, there are a lot of things that are hit or miss with me about it. I will admit that. But it does have a very consistent design philosophy clearly throughout it. I think a lot more consistent than 5e was at the start.
Absolutely.
And even where I disagree with some of the decisions, it at least renders a judgment where it makes a hard decision and saying this is what D&D's identity is instead of being a little more wishy-washy, which I respect a lot more. Even if I loved the amount of freedom wishy-washy afforded me, you and I are a big fan of artistic statements, capital A, capital S, and
well, that's the thing.
To give your art an identity is more valuable, I think, especially because in an RPG medium, the freedom of choice and the ability to get the wishy-washy is on the player side. You could easily give it that regardless of whether they assign it flavor. And so they don't need to do that. I want to know, what do you, the developer, think D&D is?
Yeah. I would much rather, as a DM, say that the changes that my setting have and my rules and all my homebrew and everything like that, when you play a game at when you come to my table and you say, here are the rules in the book, and I say, no, it's different when you're playing with me, and here's why. It feels better to say, because it's a lore choice, as opposed to, they never explained it in the book, so here's what I'm going with.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah. So it's now it changes certain homebrew things. Because obviously I'm going to be doing things regardless. I'm going to be doing things differently regardless. But when it comes to certain stuff, it helps to say, here's what it says in the book. And I think that's stupid, as opposed to, so it never said in the book. And so we have a couple of options that we can go. One way is going to be very overpowered. One way is going to be very underpowered. But these are the options that we're given. And I'm going to go with this one, I guess. One of those options feels one of those ways feels significantly better just to be able to do at a table as a GM or even as a player. Because once they give you that option, saying you're doing something different is now a choice as opposed to a necessity.
Yeah. And even with the Ranger, a lot of people are really upset because it feels like the Ranger got screwed again insofar as
I haven't read the Ranger yet, so I'll have to see.
I will say, here's my official judgment, having taken a look at the Ranger.
I'll read the Ranger when I decide to play a Ranger character. So I'll never read the Ranger.
But Haley, of course, is playing a Ranger in one of our upcoming campaigns, which is really a reboot of an earlier campaign that we all played as a home game. But she's reprising her Ranger character. And so I have a vested interest in the quality of the Ranger at the moment. Because I love my wife.
Never direct interest.
I have a vested interest. So I've been tracking the Ranger for that reason. And here's my official judgment on the Ranger from what I've looked at so far. Yes, I would agree that they are still weaker compared to the other 5e classes. I think that's more, however, a compliment to the other 5e classes, because 5e generally is very well designed, and the classes are all very powerful and awesome in their own special ways. It just feels like Ranger's special way is just not as emphasized to what the core fantasy of D&D has become. But that being said, I think my official prognosis is that the Ranger is not as powerful as the other classes still. It's in a much better place than it was in 2014, though. Much better place.
Yeah, that's not hard to do.
Yes, that's a low bar. That's a very low bar. But improvement is good, I guess, is my whole statement. Improvement is good. And it hasn't been, if you're jumping straight from 2014 to 2024 rulebooks, yes, Ranger is 100% better. Does it still have room for improvement? Yeah, but it's better than where it was. And I think that's the most I can ask of Wizards now, who all Wizards of the Coast, which, we know they all hate Rangers.
Yeah, they just have no idea what a Ranger is.
You know why? It's because they're from the West Coast.
That's true. That's very true.
There are no Rangers out there.
That's where the Rangers all stopped and became miners.
Very true. Dwarves, they understand them to a T.
They do. They really do. No, there's I think there's a lot about what the Ranger is that is confusing for both a player and for a designer, because of the fact that that's not really something that exists in our world anymore as most of these classes don't exist in our world anymore, obviously.
Very fair.
Barbarians are few and far between. We saw fighters in the form of like soldiers and everything. Like we have these kind of real world things to anchor our imaginations in. But Rangers, there isn't really anything that we can like anchor a cultural understanding of, because Rangers were a job by necessity in history, right? Like you were a Ranger for a period of time until you could stop becoming a Ranger because you finished doing the thing that you needed to do, getting to an area, getting out of an area. Like Rangering was a temporary job that you had to do that was forced upon you because of something else.
Yes, but I would actually push back on that a little bit, because I feel like there are modern equivalents that we can draw on. But I just feel like it's very culturally dependent and geographically dependent on like where you are.
Very geographically dependent.
I think if you're like very urban players probably don't know too much about rangering, but very rural players know a lot about that, right? Like
because it's a job. Like that's what I mean.
That's fair.
Like,
because it's a job. You're saying it's still just because it's culturally dependent. Not everybody has that experience of like knowing people who hunt or hunting themselves or trapping or anything like that. Because like I moved to Oklahoma, so it's like I know all about rangering now. I'm surrounded by rangers who are all looking to tell you how much of a ranger they are, but you're right. Like I'm inundated by it just by moving, which, well, I guess to be fair, even in Pennsylvania, I think we were surrounded by it a fair bit. Pennsylvania has a huge hunting culture.
It was better than like, or it was better for like, from where you came from in the big city.
For sure. But Pennsylvania, I mean, even all throughout Pennsylvania, there's a big hunting culture, especially for deer. Lots of deer out in that part of the country. Things like that, right? But even just like moving here, it's just like inundated by it, right? The cowboy fantasy is still alive and well here. And it's just a cultural thing, right? That's just, again, we need to do a whole other episode on culture shock of just you and I both living in different places. But it's
absolutely,
there is still a modern equivalence.
But again, that's like the hunter archetype is one aspect of being a ranger, right? Because like by definition, a ranger, in my opinion, because like rangers change from culture to culture, but like the thing that I think makes a ranger, like the core fantasy of a ranger, is a nomadic lifestyle, right? That's basically what it comes down to. Is a ranger is somebody who by choice lives off the land, does not like lay roots anywhere, and uses nothing but their own instincts and wit and skills to survive. And as a consequence of that lifestyle, they had developed certain things like trapping, like navigating, like hunting. These things are a consequence of that lifestyle, as opposed to a targeted thing that they're trying to do. Like one isn't a ranger because they liked hunting. They eventually got to be good at hunting because they are living a ranger lifestyle.
I hear you.
Oh, so, and that's the core fantasy I think that they need to draw on, as opposed to making it, because like also 5e is very tactical. So that aspect of the ranger is kind of very easy to turn into that playstyle. But every other character, every other class has a very easily to define core fantasy of like, what is this thing that it does? Like fighters, it's very easy. They fight.
Yes.
Rangers, what is it they do? They range. What does that mean?
Which a lot of people just assume it means they use a bow and arrow.
Ranged weapons.
Like, but that's it. A lot of people jump to that just like completely out of ignorance, basically, which seems bizarre to me because
just because it's a word association.
Yeah, it's literally just a word association, right? Like it's kind of bizarre though, because all of the explicitly ranger pop culture characters, none of them use ranged weapons, right? Like Aragorn, Drizzt,
my favorite,
Minx,
Drizzt, yeah,
right. Like none of these, all of these guys are
brawlers.
notoriously sword wielders, and these are like all of the
Aragorn.
Popular, Aragorn, iconic sword, right? Like
no, I was saying like Aragorn was a ranger by like he wasn't a ranger because that was like a thing that he was like born into, or I guess it kind of was, but he lived off the land because he wasn't welcomed anywhere because he was shunned by two different cultures, right? So he learned to live by himself. When he was done rangering, what happened? He became king. Like that wasn't like rangering wasn't his final destination. Like that was a means to get to an end. That was a way that he survived the lands. They called him they called him a ranger. They called him Strider because that's how people interacted with him. He never went out and was like, today is rangering day number 256. I'm doing great. He was just living. He was just living. And that's the problem with being a ranger is like, it's a journey. Like the core fantasy should be somebody who does that willingly. And that's how you get somebody who is the archetype of that class is somebody who's like, I am doing this because I want to. But in reality, in most situations, it's because of a forced situation, because culturally or politically you are forced out of an area and you had to live on your own. Displaced. So there's no like, there's no like historical context for people who intended to stay nomadic forever.
Right.
Because culturally you didn't do that. Individuals did that, but cultures didn't.
Yeah. No, I hear you. But that's a very fascinating discussion in general, because this delves a lot into like what the identity of the ranger is, which is, I think, really what's up for the most debate now. Because obviously, right, in a lot of the D&D culture, just out of ignorance, a lot of people think that the only thing that makes a ranger is the fact that they use ranged weapons.
Bow and arrow.
Right? Even though, again, despite the all the pop culture references that show otherwise, but it's also like just getting down. I think it's mostly getting down to a disagreement about the core definition and fantasy of this class. Yeah. Because
that's exactly it.
I think Watsy's definition and your definition and my definition are already three different definitions. I feel like none of those three parties agree on what a ranger is supposed to be. Because what you described, I think, is very indicative of the way you see rangers, which like your whole description is basically a long-winded way of saying what I know you believe, which is that the ideal ranger is played with the rogue class, right? And
that's exactly what it is.
That's like the whole definition, the succinct definition you gave at the beginning of that rant was basically just saying rogue, right? Like the rogue does all of those things. And
that's exactly why all my rangers are rogues.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was saying. That's something I know you believe, and it matches your definition you just gave, right? Which is that the ideal ranger is just a wilderness rogue, basically. A traveling rogue.
A nature rogue.
And nature rogue. So, instead of the rogue being an urban ranger, which is like what a lot of people conceive as. You conceive as the other way around, which is that a ranger is just a nature rogue. And for me, for you, the core identity of the ranger was, what was the word you used? There was one succinct word you put at the beginning, which was nomadic. Yes, is that they're nomadic. For me, the core identity of the ranger, if I had to put it in one word, is basically outdoorsman. right? Like it's the survivalist kind of archetype. And that to me is the most important part. I think they're basically like a kind of, I don't want to say woodsy because that prescribes the terrain, but that sort of thing, right?
Exactly.
Where they're
which is also a very big problem of the ranger.
Yeah, but they are a survivalist. They are somebody who can be outside of society and get by. They can make camp. Yeah. But basically they can provide for themselves, live off the land, do all that. Yeah. But the key aspect is that they are a wilderness survivalist, someone who can be kind of self-reliant in that way. And that to me is what the core fantasy of the ranger is. But like I said, even there, and then with like D&D, what Wizards of the Coast said, because I watched a lot of their videos that they were doing on explaining their design decisions for the new PHB. And what Wizards would say is the core identity of the class is as an explorer. And while there's a lot of overlap between those three definitions we gave, nomad, explorer, and survivalist, those still take you in vastly different directions if you extrapolate far enough. There's a lot of overlap.
When you apply design to those,
Exactly. There's a lot of overlap, but there's also a lot of different paths to go from there.
Yeah, and the nuance is where the classes fall in between the cracks. Yeah.
And so, but that being said, I do think they made they've overall improved the ranger. Overall.
Good.
Yes, still can be better.
That's it. Good.
Overall improvement. And I do think a lot of that is because they've also improved their definitions of exploration. It used to be the exploration pillar was one of the 3 pillars of play, right? Combat, exploration, social. And it was like the most flimsy of the 3 pillars in original 5e. Like it's just like, it was so bare bones, it might as well have not been there. And
but there's a lot of things that they've put now in the exploration tab that it's like, oh yeah, that is all part of exploration. But now that it's there, that means my exploration based characters have mechanics that they can interact with.
Exactly.
Because it's like, there's a lot of stuff that it's like, it makes sense that that's part of the exploration tab. Like, things like vision and obscurement and
hazards,
like movement, like that's, and hazards, like these
hazards
are all parts.
Is a term that I've just been using for a while in my own notes just to describe encounters basically in exploration. And I'm like, it feels like,
and it's all been codified now.
Yeah, it's all been codified. And there's just a lot of stuff in there like that where I'm like, it feels like they're catching up to us. Like I've been saying hazards for a long time, just as a proper term to describe encounters that you can face in exploration encounters, but the exploration pillar, and now it's codified. And other things, and other examples of Wizards finally catching up to us, which is, this is something that I baked into. I felt vindicated because I baked this into
I know exactly what you're going to talk about,
roleplay.
and I think that it was brilliant.
Yes, I made a decision in the Resident Roleplay Handbook, in Resident Evil Untold is what we called it, when I was creating this whole 5e based homebrew for us to play Resident Roleplay. And there was
very unnecessary in retrospect, but it worked.
But I would do it again in a heartbeat because it taught me everything that I ever needed to know about tabletop game design. And now it's like one of my career pillars, And so hands down would do it again in a heartbeat. It was the most formative teacher I ever could have asked for, reverse engineering 5th edition. And one major decision I made in there, though, as far as feats go, is that I made ability score improvement into a feat rather than an alternative, something that is the default, and then you could get a feat as an alternative. I just made ability score improvement one of the feats, and I did that years ago, and Wizards of the Coast just did that in the new Player's Handbook. I felt so vindicated.
And it just makes so much sense.
It makes so much more sense, but one decision I would make differently, though, is I would make that thing that you get every 4 levels, I'd just call that feat instead of still calling it ability score improvement. They didn't change the language there, but at least they made ability score improvement into a feat. And it is still the default prescribed feat for you to get at that.
It's kind of silly because some characters at level 19 get an epic boon.
All characters get an epic boon.
No, wait, I think you might be right. Yeah, I think they all get an epic boon. I think I might have been thinking of something else, or I clicked on something else. But the ones that I looked at least got an epic boon. At level 19, everyone gets an epic boon. An epic boon is a feat. It's in the feats section. There are origin feats, there are general feats, and then there are epic boons, which means at level 19, you get a feat.
Yes.
And at level 1, you get a feat with your origin feat. And then every 4 levels in between, you get an ability score improvement, not a feat.
Yeah.
But you can pick any feat.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very strange because like it's right there. It's right there. Level 1, you get an origin feat. Level 19, you get an epic boon feat. The levels in between, you get a general feat. It's feats everywhere. It's a friggin' centipede on this.
You're 100% correct. I feel like that would have been very clarifying language for them to use. Alas, they did not do that. But it would have made all
They were so
sense.
close.
They were so close to brilliance, but that's the story of WotC, isn't it?
To be fair, like, it makes no like gameplay difference other than
yes, it's purely an editorial decision. What we're talking about, which to be fair, they did make a lot of editorial improvements in this, right? They have a lot of clarifying language. They capitalize a lot. Yes, it's so much easier to read. They capitalize a lot more proper terms, right? Proper game terms. They made a lot of editorial decisions that just improve the language of the book and make it clearer to read. Yeah. Although one thing I'm not happy about is the fact that there's no one section that has all of the condition definitions listed. I hated that.
Is it?
No. It's in
it's
in the rules glossary. The rules glossary.
I've seen the rules glossary.
Is a section where they just have all the definitions for all the terms. The problem is it's alphabetized. Each condition has its own entry in the rules glossary, which because it's alphabetized means the conditions are all over the place in that glossary. Not helpful.
Okay. I'm looking at the digital version.
There is one place at the beginning where it lists all of the conditions together, but not with their definitions.
Yeah. Glossary conventions, rules, definitions. I'm looking at the digital book right now.
As we speak. Live reading.
That is true. So yeah, because I was looking at the because I never actually looked at the conditions because I looked at them, I was like, oh yeah, I know what those are, and then never clicked on them. But yeah, like in the rules glossary, it says condition, blinded condition, charm condition, deafened condition, yada yada yada. And then when you actually go to the conditions chapter, it just lists them all in alphabetical order. Because then you have stuff like because like it's just all of the rules, all of the proper nouns defined. Yeah, like you'll have attunement, and then next is blinded condition, or next is burning hazard. Yeah. Instead of having the conditions and the hazards and the actions and the area of effects.
This is all they had to do. Here. All they had to do was switch that alphabet around and just be like conditions blinded, and then they would all be grouped together. That's the problem.
Isn't that a standard thing? Is to do like with magical items, right? You name them by the thing they are first, then the specific thing, like rod
Potion
of blank.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then they didn't do it here, where it would have been very useful. And I think the
instead
reason
of area of effect, dash, cone, cube, cylinder.
Yeah,
it's
why?
It's silly.
Just plain silly. They make you need a DM screen, basically, is what they've done by not grouping them together. They make you need a DM screen, and no one should need a DM screen. That should be a very optional thing, in my opinion. But they made you have to be way more reliant on it.
Yeah, a DM screen should always be a compromise to playing a game.
Yeah, not a necessity. And don't get me wrong, I always play with a DM screen. I love DM screens. Nothing against them. But you should never need these additional tools to play.
I have something against DM screens.
Okay. What's your bone?
The only thing I have, again, my only bone to pick with DM screens is when they cost money.
You're saying it should come with the handbook.
A DM screen, if you're going to give a player, or rather, if you're going to give a person, because at this point they're not a player. If you're going to give a person a set of rules that they have to use to play a game, and then make them pay money for the cheat sheet, that's stupid.
Very fair. I think I agree with that. Every player's handbook should rightfully come with a DM screen. It is a crime that it doesn't. And
no. The player's handbook comes with a character sheet. The DM's guide comes with the DM screen.
Oh, you're very right there. Which is true because player's handbook does come with character sheets. If it comes with character sheets, like why the heck not? I mean, I get from a manufacturing perspective why not. Like from a business perspective, I get why they're separate things. From a human perspective, it is a veritable complaint.
No, just make every page of the DM screen, like the last 3 pages of the DM's guide, should be
make that the
printable pages. Yeah, should be printable pages that you can assemble just with tape.
Yeah, and just tape and cardboard.
Yeah, just tape and cardboard and just get those 3 pages, slap them on there and say, or just not even, staple them together. Just flip through it like a normal human being.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I did all of Resident Roleplay. I had a printout. I made my own DM screen. I literally just made it as a printout, stapled that bad boy together, had that sheet right in front of me the whole time I was GMing. That's how I did for all of Resident Roleplay. This is such
How would you like to pay $24 for that?
No! I got paper. This stuff literally grows on trees.
That's the only thing about a DM screen is that there are so many products that are just cheat sheets. And I'm like, that should come with the game. Why am I paying money for this extra stuff?
Yeah, it's kind of I agree with that bone to pick. That's a good
complaint. DM screen should be free. The sleeve for the DM screen should cost money.
Yes, because that's the product, right? The aesthetic is the product, not the information. The information should be open source. The product,
you literally had all this stuff. Like you bought it already once. The definitions, you already bought. The words, you already bought. You already done bought it. You don't have to buy it again.
Yeah, I 100% agree. 100% agree. The product is the prop, is basically what it is, right? That's what the product is. That's what you're paying money for.
It's like a dice tower.
Yes, exactly.
You don't have to pay money to roll dice.
Yes.
But
100%. I hear
you do have to pay money to get the dice. But you shouldn't have to pay money to buy the dice and then pay money again to roll it.
Which sounds like something Hasbro would monetize if they could.
Hasbro in a merger with EA.
Yes, has basically you got to pay taxes every time you roll your dice. They all got these little trackers in them,
and it's an extra extra subscription cost every time you roll 20.
Yes. Alternatively, the dice can display an advertisement every time you roll them if you would like to opt out of paying them.
Yeah, it's a 30-second ad for your critical.
Yeah. Just interrupts your play, cannot be silenced.
This critical success has been brought to you by...
Yeah, that'd be wild, but it sounds like a very possible dystopian future. That's a very fair complaint. Very fair complaint. I hear you.
Yeah.
But overall, I do like what they've done with the place.
It's very tidy. I love looking at this, like just purely from an organizational point of view, just going on like D&D Beyond, looking at table of contents for the 2024 and the 2014 handbook. Man, is it like night and day. 2021 or the 2014 handbook, it's like a maze. Like you really have to know what you're looking for already to find it. In 2024, I can stumble upon things and I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is just like where I would expect this to be.
Yeah. Well, and I have had some difficulty navigating it, but I also recognize that all that difficulty stems from an instinct of where they used to be, right? If this was my if this was my intro to D&D, if this was my first rule book, for sure it'd be 100% more intuitive to navigate. Yeah, and like we said, we were pointing out, I was really worried about replacing all the art because I was very attached to the art in the original PHB. It's become very iconic because we've all just been staring at it for the last 10 years. But that being said, I do like the new art in the book overall. I have a few complaints which we've kind of talked about. Actually, we haven't talked about one of them.
What's that?
The cover art. I do not like the new 3 cover arts for the new 3 core rule books as much as the original ones, just because there's no solid singular color palette for each of them. They're both very colorful and kind of all over the place with a bunch of different values. I don't know. It just feels less iconic to me. It feels like it doesn't feel like it's going to stand the test of time as well because, in the 2014, it was easy, right? You had red, blue, and purple. And you knew those were different books that you were looking at for each one. With the new 3 core rule books, it feels like you have to look at the title to identify them, and it's a lot less, I don't know, neat. It feels like that there's no solid color choice for each cover art. That is something that I actually think is a downgrade. That being
just
said,
a straight up downgrade.
Yeah, I think that's a straight up downgrade.
I'll have to see them because I agree. I agree that should be a conscious design decision to make every book be visually distinct, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure to the extent which they've fallen away or made a different decision in that regard because I haven't seen the cover arts yet, but for all of them, I mean. But if it's not easily discernible from a distance that the 3 books are different books, that is a straight up design fail. Like that is just. Mm-hmm. It's just not good design.
Yeah. And that's the problem is it's obviously Wizards hires generally good artists, right? Like, and so like art wise, like it is good artwork. It's good illustration, I should say. But yeah, what we're talking about is design decisions. And that I feel like it kind of is lackluster for me. Here's what makes it a bigger complaint. Here's what makes it a bigger complaint for me, which winds us back to our previous conversation about capitalism, which is the special editions do have hard color choices and palettes for each of the cover arts, but those cost more money.
That really seems like that should be the backwards way. The base versions have a distinct color palette, so everybody gets the ones where it's like you can easily say, "Oh, you have the DM's guide." I can tell because it's sitting between 3 other books in your shelf, and that one's is the DM's guide color. But the special editions are things that you buy to stand out by themselves, right? To sit on a like a coffee table and say like, "Whoa, that's a sick book. What is that?" "Oh, let me introduce you to the Player's Handbook 2024. Like that should be backwards.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that definitely is one of my kind of major art design complaints. We were talking about the classes beforehand as well. Overall, I was really worried about the classes because all the old class artworks were pretty iconic. I think they actually did a great job with them. I love that they get a full page spread now instead of just a disembodied character, or just rather a separate character that just sits on the page. I love that they have a full page spread that has an environment and a background and everything, and then this really dope character at the fore of it, as well as the little subtitles they've given all the classes. Love that.
It's significantly better. Like just a straight up good idea to give flavor descriptions to directly attached to each class. Give them subtitles, give them little blurbs and say, this is like the intention when you're picking this class. When I was reading through the classes, and it's like, what is it like where it says like fighters, like if you want to do this is the fighter subclass you want to pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas it like, it's like, so like I'm looking at the thing, it's like barbarian does their thing, then follow the path of then it gives you each subclass to say what you want to do as a barbarian, and it tells you what the subclass does, like right out of the gate, instead of having to read the whole dang class.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Like I said, lots of little editorial improvements like that. But yeah, I do love the class artworks overall. I think they're all just really potent, and I think they can become a new iconic in their own ways. I think we both kind of talked about, I think the only ones I had issue with were the Sorcerer and the Warlock. I think those are
I agree with you on Warlock.
Yeah, that don't feel like they're a great sell for the base kind of archetype or prototype for what a typical idea of that character should be.
I can see Sorcerer, but compared to the other casters, it doesn't stand out as much. Like I like the Sorcerer one, but it doesn't scream Sorcerer. It could also be it's too close to the Wizard.
Yeah, for me, it felt like it could have been a Bard, but the fact that there are other options of what it could have been, right, for the same artwork is a testament to the fact that it doesn't scream Sorcerer. But that being said, the art's great overall. Great book, lots of editorial improvements. I think I'm overall satisfied, and I am probably going to be using this going forward for my D&D games. So.
Well, there's so much about it that like going back to the 2014 version would just feel clunky after reading this now.
Exactly, right? Like, because there's a lot of it.
If we played 2014, we're just going to be playing this with some extra rules.
Exactly, right? Like, there's a lot of it, like we were saying, that just kind of intuitively updates it to the way the game has been played, has come to be played over these last 10 years. And so it's not as big as an adjustment as we were thinking. It's mostly just in like the kind of I guess, character option details of like the features and the feats.
Well, the balance has been changed.
And
like
the balance and the backgrounds, the species, all that. Like the nitty gritty of all those have changed, but it's like that's something that gets settled at character creation once, and then you don't have to worry about it again for the rest of your campaign.
Yeah. The play is gonna feel exactly the same, which I think was what they're intended to do. Was what they're intending with it, where like it feels like you're playing the same game, but the rules are significantly changed on like the DM side. It's mostly the DM that's gonna feel most of the changes. The players aren't gonna feel too different. It's just gonna feel like you're playing a different subclass to the one that you're playing already. Even if it's the same subclass, it's just gonna feel like you're playing a slightly different subclass, and the rules are basically going to be the same. It's just that your DM might be a little bit faster now.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's suffice to say, yeah, again, we're going to be using this, and I'm very much looking forward to it because we got some exciting campaigns on the horizon. I think we should just kind of conclude with talking about, or at least mentioning that very briefly, because I don't think we've made any public announcement of the fact that I'm working on a campaign for actual play right now. That is going to be going up on our channel. It's called The Five Nations, and it's basically a sort of soft reboot / continuation of a home game that we used to play. And it's really exciting, but we're kind of assembling a cast to kind of expand that a bit, and while also revisiting some characters that are old to us but are going to be new to our audience. And it's going to be my first time doing a proper long form D&D campaign in actual D&D, without
an actual proper D&D.
Yeah, like not instead of a weird homebrew like resin roleplay. So I'm very much excited for that. And then of course we've been talking about your Vera campaign for a while. So lots of RPGs on the horizon for P-Cubed.
The Vera campaign has been waiting for the longest time just for me to be able to stream.
Yeah.
Like we had talked about so many things where it's like, okay, maybe you might stream it and then and then I'll just GM it and then you deal with everything. But I'm like, oh, there's like problems. Like if I ever have to take people outside of the table, then it's like it's a really one-sided type of thing because like all the content is happening off screen.
Yeah,
but yeah, and there's Anyways, I now have gigabit internet with really decent upload. So
yes, that's all that problem, and also the fact that you have been streaming again with that, and that was really exciting to see. You were streaming really late for me, but I did pop in briefly. But that was really awesome to see, and I can't wait to see you guys.
We're gonna do another one soon, actually. But
Haley and I need to continue Undertale.
Yeah,
at some point,
because Rose showed me The Witch's House, and I beat it in that one stream. I was able to get within. Yeah, because like we went slightly over our intended stopping time because I was like an hour away from the end. He's like, just get to the end.
Yeah,
and so I was able to get to one of the endings. I think there's like 3 endings, and there's like a challenge run ending that I want to get next one where you have to get through the entire game without saving and without dying. Well, I guess without dying is
this like a survival horror game? Because I was going to say that's a very survival horror kind of challenge run.
No, it's just a horror RPG game. It's difficult to say like what kind of genre it is because like only games I've ever played like this are this one and Ebe, which is basically the exact same game with a different theme. It's a very particular kind of like indie RPG feel.
Okay,
you have to play it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I would highly recommend both of those games, Ebe and Witch's House. Very good games.
Yeah.
Anyways,
all that to say, stay tuned because we're working on lots of cool stuff. We're going to be streaming. We got the creative juices are a pumping, and greasing wheels and other metaphors. So let's go.
Monkeys and wrenches and I don't know something.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all very much for listening. This has been the Hypercube podcast. This show is mixed and edited by Raphael Pacheco with original theme music by Mono Memory. Until next time, we'll see you all later. God bless.
Adios.